war machine for it.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Here's Johnny.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
Hi there, my little droogies.
Film Church.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I want you to live with me, and die with me, and everything with me.
Well, hello. Geez, welcome to Film Church Radio. This is the podcast that treats cinema as a religion as such. It's Sunday. I'm Branden.
And I'm Lewis.
And we're here to talk about movies and things. And, you know, each week, Lewis and I, we alternate picking a film for both of us to watch and discuss. And it's really pretty interesting. But this week, we continue our 2023 director retrospective on Stanley Kubrick. We're going to watch chronologically each film of Stanley Kubrick and discuss in detail. And this week we're discussing Lolita from 1962, starring James Mason, Sue Lyon, and Peter Sellers. This is it, people. We're doing this. We're talking about Lolita.
We are.
It's going to be the most uncomfortable episode of Film Church Radio yet. So get ready. The book that I'm reading, I probably should have pulled up what it is and who wrote it. I'll tell you here in a little bit after I look it up. But the guy basically said that this film is a portrait of delusion, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But again, you're going to have to wait just a few minutes when we talk about the show or talk about the movie. First, we want to say thank you to everybody who's been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. If you're new to the show, I feel like this is a weird one to pick as your first episode.
No judgment, but hey.
But welcome. Thanks for being here. It is a good film. I'm going to say that, but you know, it's icky. But thanks for being here nonetheless. You can subscribe to us if you're not offended. And just follow us on all the social media channels at Film Church Radio, where you can leave us a comment and tell us how much you hate us. We're also on YouTube and other social media. Like I said, YouTube, we've got extra content. We've got some like video podcasts on there with guests and stuff. So if you want to see what we look like and throw tomatoes at your screen, you can do that. And listen to us from whatever favorite podcast service you like. We're on them all. Before we discuss the film, Lewis and I like to talk about other things that we've been watching this week. So kind of like trailers before the movie. And I haven't been watching a ton. I've got a couple of things, but Lewis is always, he always brings the brings the best part of this show with his watches, because he's got many.
Yeah. You're too kind. I wouldn't say that, but I've ticked off some of the films from last year that I hadn't seen that got a lot of attention around, the best films of the year lists that have been circulating. So I started with Saint Omer, which is a French film directed by Alice Diop about a woman who stands trial for killing her 15-month-old daughter. And it's about a journalist that kind of travels and is in the courtroom while this is happening. And it's a very interesting film.
Yeah. It's very dark.
Yes, it is. This is going to sound really wrong. In a way, it feels very uncinematic, but I think that's because it is cinematic. That sounds like it's not going to work, but it kind of is. I mean, in the courtroom, in the court scenes, which make up 90% of the film, it's kind of the main woman's testimony. about, what's been going on and what's happening and why she shouldn't take the blame, basically.
Yeah.
And it's long takes of characters kind of speaking long monologues. And the editing is very strange. We cut to other characters reacting to that news or reacting to things at weird times. It's not like at the end of a sentence, we cut to a character and they're like reacting to it. A character would ask a question and then the camera would stay on them and someone from off camera would be like giving their response and we would just focus on like the juror or whoever was asking this question. And at first when it ended, I felt very like lukewarm to it. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. But it buries in. And I've been thinking about it a lot and about kind of the themes and stuff. And I think it deals a lot with postpartum depression and motherhood and what it means to be a mother. And maybe that part of it doesn't work for me because I'm not a mother. I've seen motherhood and I've got strong characters in my life that are mothers. But I've never seen it from that perspective before. But it was very interesting and something I think that I need to go back and kind of just watch again. Now that I know that the verdict of the court doesn't really matter. It's more about the characters and what they're actually saying.
Yeah.
So I gave it 3.5, and I did bump it up. I gave it 3 originally, and then I bumped it up half a star because I was like, actually, I'm thinking about it a lot. It's obviously sticking with me. But then, and I think I watched it on the same day as the next film, and I think that this just blew it out of the water. I finished Joanna Hogg's Souvenir trilogy, and I watched The Eternal Daughter from last year.
How about don't talk about it at all? That sounded really rude, but like, sorry.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, shut up. We should save it.
Okay, cool.
We'll save it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all I meant.
There is a review that I wrote a few thoughts when it had finished on my Letterboxd.
Yeah.
And I know that we both loved it. Well, we both loved the Souvenir Part 1 and Part 2. So yeah, I assume that you're probably going to watch it soon.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. And then we'll talk about it together.
Yeah.
Sorry to throw you off.
No. And then HBO had Sam Mendes' new film, which I didn't realize was coming to streaming already, Empire of Light, starring Olivia Colman, Toby Jones, a film that I like the look of. I like Sam Mendes a lot. I think like when you're starting out on a film odyssey, especially where we came from, the decades that we came from, American Beauty played a huge part in like what film could be. It's mainstream, but it felt indie, in a weird kind of way. And for a long time, I was like, I love this film. I haven't watched it for many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm a big fan of Sam Mendes. I do like his films, and this is right up my alley. It's about an old cinema on the British coast in the 80s, and about the people working in there. There's still a projectionist, and his room is like a gold mine. There's just pictures of like film stars on the walls, and there's a lot of care of him like moving the canisters in and out of the room and like unspooling them and stuff like that, which was so great to see. The criticisms I had seen was that there was too much going on and it was a bit jumbled. I don't feel like that. I don't think there was too much going on. And I had a good time with it. I thought it was, a nice, simple story. I think it told the things it had to tell really well. And it's just a bit slight. It's not a big film. And I think that's kind of where it fell down in the ratings for some people. It's just very under the surface and calm,
Yeah, where I guess most of his other movies are pretty intense and action-y.
Yeah. I mean, you think of other films that he's done, like Revolutionary Road with Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. There's like a big it's a big emotional character piece.
Yeah.
And there are beats in here that are emotional, but it all feels it feels very real,
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. I don't think these characters feel like real people. They're not, big things do happen, but it's always done in like a kind of low key way. But it was a perfect like Sunday film, the kind of thing that Sunday afternoon you're like, oh, I want a like enjoyable film to watch. Empire of Light's a good pick.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, Decision to Leave from 2022. Another film that I've been meaning to watch for a while, finally got round to it. Not at all how I thought it would be. I read a lot saying that it was Hitchcockian, which is always going to be a plus. Always add it to my watch list when I see that.
Yeah.
And it's really well made. I think that the director, Park Chan-wook, is having such a wonderful time with the camera. There's all these wonderful camera movements, and we're zooming in, we're zooming out. Characters are kind of, sideways. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
And then some of the sets look just like sets. They're very kind of stagey. And I think that works for it. It gives it a very fairy tale-esque feel to it throughout the film.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really good. And there's the main character kind of part of what she talks about is related to the title. She has one line of dialogue where she says, it was my decision to leave. And I was like, whoa, that's really good. Just these little moments that you're like, I really like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really fun. It was really, really fun.
Nice.
I don't think any of these that I've talked about, we'll save Eternal Daughter for later, would have made like my top, like come close to my top of the film of the year though.
Yeah.
When we talked about, like Fabelmans and stuff like that, I don't think
it
could touch them.
Well, none of these got nominated really, did they?
Yeah, I mean, no, they didn't. I think Empire of Light got nominated for something because it's Roger Deakins was the cinematographer,
okay.
who is, and it does
amazing.
look beautiful. It does look amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, none of these did. And I don't think they would have made my, top 5 maybe. Maybe it would have, got close, but yeah, I'm glad that I've ticked them off though, because I feel like for a while, everyone, especially Decision to Leave, was talking about Decision to Leave.
Yeah.
So.
Sweet. Yeah, I need to catch up on all these.
There's just too much. It's hard to, I feel like I was in a mood where I was like, I just need to get these watched.
Yeah.
So.
Film responsibilities.
Apparently, not the Oscar films though, What about you? What have you been watching?
I haven't been watching much. I rewatched Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which I've seen tons of times, but I guess not enough.
Yeah.
At least for Sarah, because it's like one of her favorite movies, and she's like quoting it all the time. And then I'm always like, I'm like, what is that from? And she's like, Scott Pilgrim. Like, I can't quote this movie. Like, we rewatched it, and probably needs to be an annual watch for us, because I mean it's a great movie and it's aged really, really well.
Yeah,
everybody in it is great. And I did notice on your letterbox that it was a pretty low rating, so I'm wondering what how many times you've seen this movie, and when's the last time you saw it?
Have a look. Yeah. Oh, it is a low rating. What is wrong with me? I think I've only logged it once, and that was in 2018, May 18th, 2018.
But you had to have seen it before that, right? You didn't see it when it came out? I
think so. I don't think I saw it in cinemas.
It was 2010 when it came out, and I was working at a movie theater when it came out, so I've got a couple of posters.
Nice.
That are cool. Yeah, the poster is awesome. He's like Michael Cera is like holding a guitar and like bending over and playing, and then there's like this pattern that's coming out of the guitar, and it's like kind of this circular thing, but he's like bowing down, and I like put it in my bathroom, and he's like bowing towards the toilet. And it was awesome. But anyway, it's like it's so great because it's 2010 and there's so many people in that movie that have become superstars.
Oh,
I mean, like Brie Larson is in it. Aubrey Plaza is in it. Chris, one of the Chris's, Evans,
Yeah.
yes, is in it. One of the Culkins. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So many great people in the movie, and yeah, it's just it's a lot of fun, and it was kind of great for its time because it's a movie based on a comic book, and the comic book is based on video games. So it's kind of like this weird like mashing of genres that I think Edgar Wright did a really good job with. So much so that like when it came out, it was almost so obvious that I feel like I couldn't appreciate it as much at the time, but now it's like aged really well, and like I don't know anything else like it.
Yeah.
Or at least anything else that does it as well as it does. Because it's like this weird mix of action comedy, I guess, because it's like it's not real. Like it's all like all the action sequences are like heightened in a way that's like video game fake. You know what I mean? So it's not. And I guess maybe because I'm a little bit older now and I don't play video games as much, so video games to me are now more nostalgic and like playing, old Nintendo and Sega Genesis and that kind of era. And I think it's more of that flavor than it is of like video games nowadays.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's I think one that I'll have to watch annually or biannually.
That's good. I mean, I have no idea why my rating was so low. I'm finding this a lot because, like, when we rewatched Indiana Jones and what's the last one called? The
Last
Crystal
Crusade
Skull.
Crystal Skull, yeah.
Yeah. That popped up when I was going to rate it, and the first time I watched it, I think I gave it like 1.5, and I was like, "Whoa." I don't think it was that bad. I don't know what. So maybe this is like a trend. Maybe I'm just getting a bit more nicer.
Maybe.
I'm opening my heart to more. I don't know, but yeah, that is strange.
I mean, it's also like it all depends on like your mood and stuff of the day. Like if you're having a good day or a bad day, like movies. Yeah, like movies can sometimes connect with you, and sometimes they can't, depending on where you're at in your life.
And I love Edgar Wright.
Yeah, exactly.
So wow, crazy.
It's on Netflix, so if you want to give it a rewatch.
Yeah.
And then I finally finished Dave season 2, which is the show that Lil Dicky does. If anybody knows Lil Dicky, which I think you either love him or hate him.
I was going to say, is Little Dicky a homie or is he like just a celebrity?
Well, he's a rapper.
Okay.
He's like a white rapper, with this big fro.
Okay.
So not, I mean, he's got a fro like me, so he doesn't necessarily look like me, but he's white and he's got a fro. I'm not a rapper.
2 out of 3.
But it's basically based on his life, and I don't know how closely based on it is, but the rapper's real name is Dave, so that's what the show is called.
Yeah.
And when the show starts, he's like, kind of a wannabe rapper. He's never performed live and stuff, so it kind of goes through his journey of like getting famous and stuff. And I remember talking to you about it when I watched the first season, because I was like, dude, this is the funniest show I've ever seen, like in a long time. Like I've laughed so hard at this show. But it also gets very emotional, and season 2 is like that too. Like season 2 holds up, and I think season 1 came out in 2020, season 2 came out in 2021, and season 3 is coming out in a couple months. So I'm glad I just now caught up. Yeah, the balance of like comedy and drama is handled really well. Which makes sense because I was listening to an interview with Judd Apatow recently, and the hosts were like, "So what are you watching that you really like? That's got you excited and stuff?" And he's like, "Honestly, the show Dave is like really great," which makes sense because Judd Apatow is like the king of Staten Island. No, I'm just kidding. He's like the king of balancing. Comedy and drama.
Yeah.
Like he does that really well.
Yeah. And I really liked his show Love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would highly recommend the show if you're looking for something just to, laugh at.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We've been watching a lot of like BBC dramas at the moment, one in particular. And there's not many laughs in it. So maybe this is something we need to throw on afterwards to lighten the mood.
Yeah, it's it's really good. And there's a lot of celebrity cameos in it and stuff. And Kevin Hart is one of the producers.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So if that means anything to you. He's a good comedian. I don't know. I'm not going to shit on him. What am I saying?
Yeah.
His movies are hit and miss, I guess.
Yeah.
He's good in Jumanji.
He is really good in Jumanji.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
That's like, you'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's good in 2 movies, Jumanji and
Jumanji,
Welcome to the
Next
Jungle.
Level. Yeah.
Oh, The Next Level. The first one is Welcome to the Jungle. That's right. Or the second one.
Yeah, it's
the first of the reboots.
Yeah. I always find it crazy that the kid from Hereditary is like.
I know, because he's so good in Hereditary. I mean, he's good in Jumanji too, but like
Hereditary is like his film,
Oh yeah, dude.
So
yeah,
crazy,
good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, I think it's on to our feature presentation. How did they ever make a movie of Lolita, 1962? Humbert Humbert is a middle-aged British novelist who is both appalled and attracted to the vulgarity of American culture. When he comes to stay at the boarding house run by Charlotte Hayes, he soon becomes obsessed with Lolita, the woman's teenage daughter. If you've not seen this movie, it's as creepy as that description sounds. But I had seen it before. Lewis has seen it before. We probably watched it like both around the same time, like a while ago.
Yeah.
It's one of those Kubrick films that gets brought up every once in a while, and it's like, it sounds like something that's, I mean, the way that it was talked about before I saw it was like, okay, it sounds like I need to see this movie.
Yeah.
Because of how much praise it gets. It's not a bad movie. It's a good movie. It's a very well-made movie. It showcases a lot of talent, the actor's talent and stuff. But it exists. It's a very weird watch, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
I mean, even back then, it was highly controversial. And it was deemed by the Catholic Church as like sinful to watch. Like if you watched the movie, you would be committing a sin. The book was also highly controversial. And not to defend Kubrick for making this movie, and maybe he's the one that started this trend, I don't know. But sometimes like filmmakers like do something controversial in order to like get national or worldwide recognition of their name, so they can like start making more stuff and just become a recognizable name. And that seems like maybe I mean, nobody's like talked about this. Like, this is just from my perception. It's a good strategy in order to become a worldwide filmmaker, I guess. And I don't know if that was actually his intention. But yeah, like I'm still the thing watching it this time. This is only the second time I've watched it, and yeah, the thing watching it this time that I like had no memory of was the comedy in this film. Like I forgot completely that it like had so much comedy, but that's basically what the movie is. It's like it's a satire about pedophilia. And I think that's like, I mean, I guess as a filmmaking challenge, that's the attraction, is like, how can I make them like one of the darkest things to discuss and dive into a satire. And I mean, it kind of accomplishes it, but like at what, I mean, did it at the same time, it's like, why did we need to do that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so this had been a film that Kubrick had been trying to make for quite a few years. You know, he was working on it around the same time as One-Eyed Jacks, was trying to get it off the ground before he got pulled in to do Spartacus. He'd been trying to do it for a while. And I feel like as soon as Spartacus took off and, you know, became the success that it was, he was like, right, I'm going to make the film I want to make. I want to do, you know, what I want to do. But this, even at the time, I mean, even now, I think if you were approaching to make this film, it would be a very daunting task in terms of like, how can I make this palatable to the masses?
Yeah.
And I mean, especially at the time, because, you know, our restrictions on what you can and can't show aren't anywhere as near as stringent as they were, you know, coming out of the 50s and into the 60s. You know, the Hays Code was still a thing. It needed to get certified to be able to be shown, all these things. So I can't imagine why you would want to do it. And I know that the book is very highly praised and people see it as a classic. And I was doing some research because I started to read it, as you know, and didn't get super far into it just because of the subject matter. It's hard to digest. It's hard to kind of, you know, read it and
live in that world.
Exactly. So I was looking at like other people's reviews of the book and just to see what it was that made it so great. And people were saying that it's the narrative form, the fact that the narrator, who is Humber, is very unreliable and he like bashes around, so you're never quite sure if he's telling the truth or not. And it's kind of like, you know, a plot twist. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. But I don't know how you could think that would translate to the screen.
Right.
And I think this is as good as it probably can be.
Yeah, well, especially for the time, because it was like, when I was watching it, it was like, this feels like a sitcom.
Yeah.
Like the way, even the way it's shot, like the only thing it's missing is like the laugh track. You know, it's like, because it almost feels like it's not even taking itself seriously at times, you know? It's like all the characters are so heightened.
Yeah.
But they're also still wooden in a way. Like there's only one layer of these characters, except for maybe the Peter Sellers character. But like, but even him, he's like, even the Claire Quilty character is he is who he is, and he's not. There's no more depth to him, I guess. Yeah. Like he does play a bunch of different characters, but that's almost like a mask to hide something deeper and darker, you know. But yeah, the characters are very heightened versions of themselves, but only to one degree, to where like like Lolita isn't like you never really see any of her trauma.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that is very much missing from this film. Granted, I guess at the time that was something that you couldn't really show, or else this movie would have. I mean, he already had a hard time like getting past the censors. It's like if you showed the trauma, they might just not have put it out at all. Because it would have been too real for people, I guess.
And it would have changed the film completely. I mean, I think the fact that, as the film goes along, Humber is degraded so much to the point where he's just like, he just kind of wanders off. He's he's so
pathetic.
lost and pathetic. And I think that's what the film needs in terms of like to keep that tone throughout. Because if it would have started to look at like the effect that it had on Lolita, then it would be more of a hard-hitting drama, I guess. And it tries to keep it light, and I think that's more of a distraction tactic. I think that the lightness of it is really trying to distract you away from the subject matter to kind of, to be accessible to hundreds of people or thousands or millions of people. Because, like I said, when I first saw it, I really, really liked it. Yeah. I thought that it was really well done, and I thought that, the taboo subjects, I probably confused the fact that it was pushing the envelope with the fact that it was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I think they're two very different things. And on the rewatch, as you were saying, it just struck me that it is very problematic, obviously, but also that I don't think you can say the things that you need to say with it being as censored as it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely missing another layer, I think, for, I don't know, it's like, it's such a, I'm trying not to dance around. I'm trying to like actually say what I'm trying to say here, but I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so the book that I'm reading that I forgot to mention earlier, or forgot the name of, is called Stanley Kubrick, American Filmmaker, by David Mickes, or Mickes, yeah, I think that's how you say it. And he kind of goes into talking about how it leaves, it doesn't ever let you see the side of Lolita that is hurting, and struggling and like, traumatized and horrible relationships with multiple people, including her mother.
Yeah.
But even like he points out, which I noticed, but it's like it kind of drives the point home a lot more when he pointed it out, that even when she finds out that her mother has passed, the camera just cuts. Like the scene just cuts. Like you don't get to see her reaction to that realization. There is a scene after that where she's crying, but it's not, it's like post, like the moment that you would show is like her realizing it and then like going through that. But that's held back from us as an audience. So we never really, I don't know what to think about that. Like there's, like I was saying, there's like that layer is missing from it, which, I kind of just have to look at this movie as like, just almost like a weird sitcom that's trying to deal with subject matter that
it can't, because it's prime time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I don't think we should like shove topics like pedophilia under the rug and just act like they don't happen and not talk about them. Like this is a problem in the world. And it's, probably even more so in this day, like back then when it was made, because of the patriarchy. I mean, it's still like obviously a huge problem today, I think. But yeah, I mean, you can tell. I mean, for the time period it is, like, you can, like, men just have so much authority.
Yeah.
And they still do. But, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's the joke of the first part, isn't it? That, like, he's in this marriage and he's kind of emasculated because of it.
Yeah.
Like, she holds the power for the most part. Going back to what you were saying, though, I think that what the film does do is keep Lolita at arm's length from us as the viewer. You know, compared to that, like, we never see her emotional side or like the traumatized side. And I think that that's something it does do really well. Instead of having us relate to James Mason's character, we're just put in his position quite a lot of the time. You know, the film is structured so that we feel like he does, in terms of, like, when Lolita is still this enigma. You know, she's out of arm's reach in terms of just her having been on screen. You know, I was thinking the first hour, we don't really see her that much. She's kind of, you know, it's more about the relationship between James Mason and Shelley Winters.
Yeah.
And their marriage kind of breaking down. It's not until the second half that we get to know her a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that is the touch of a really good filmmaker, is that even when the character is deplorable and someone that you can't relate to, you still feel that you're put on their side. If not on their side, like,
well, yeah, you're just put in their
but
perspective constantly, because
exactly.
I mean, he's the main character, and, like, he's in all of the scenes.
Yeah, and it never feels like it never feels forced, you know.
Yeah.
And by the time that we do get to spend time with Lolita, it's not until, you know, further down the line that you're like, okay, this is getting really, really bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a bad movie by any means. I
No.
mean, we're trying to, like, discuss, like, the subject of the film, and kind of how, you know, the representation of people who are sexually abused and raped, and it's like, it's hard to it's hard to just be like, yeah, this movie is amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Because it is a very well-made film. And, like, it is, you know, there's just the fact that he was able to make something like this that could be shown to people, and, you know, maybe the movie has done some good. I don't know. Maybe it has opened a dialogue about, you know, the subject matter to where people could talk about it. Because, like, one of the things that in the documentary about Kubrick, that his wife Christiane said, was that Stanley liked the book because it clarified the feeling that good and evil do not come in the expected package. Yeah. And yeah, I think the movie does highlight that. Like, it points out that, you know, like, evil people can be your neighbors, or your theater teacher, or, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go out there and
start
looking at your neighbor like he's a pedophile, but you know, you can't just I mean, it's
yeah, people are hiding stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's also quite an interesting comment on, like, the fetishism of American audiences as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, there's so much in media that tries to make females appear as, like, younger, and, you know, alluring the whole, you know, there's so many articles written about how, you know, people are made to look younger and sound younger, and their age changing and stuff like that. And I think that that's kind of what it's talking about, is that, well, part of it is just the fetishism that we put on stuff like that is like, actually, this is disgusting. You know, this isn't, you know, something that we should do. Even the poster for Lolita is, like, very striking, you know, with the, like, the heart glasses, and she's, like, sucking a lollipop and stuff. It's just, you know, even that is like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think the real life satirical aspect about this is that the Catholic Church would deem watching this movie as simple when we know what's going on over there. Hot take.
I mean, they were just passing those out. I mean, I feel like any kind of renegade director from this period you read about, and they've come up against the Catholic Legion of Decency for something or other. They imposed some, whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, these are the people that didn't want to see a flushing toilet on TV or on the screen. Yeah. So,
which I guess toilets were just okay now because there's toilets in this movie.
Yeah. Just letting that slip by.
Yeah. Just the toilet is not the worst thing you'll find in this film.
That's true. I think that we've talked about Kubrick and his black humor and the fact that how he tells his stories are always a little bit mean, especially to the viewer. He keeps us kind of on a string. But I think this is the first example of a whole movie being like a black comedy. Yeah. It's not, the things that happen aren't funny. They shouldn't be funny, but it's told in such a great way that, you feel like laughing. Like the whole scene where his wife finds his diary. Yeah. And that aftermath, and he's kind of running around the house trying to make excuses, but inwardly being like, I could kill her and get away with it.
Yeah. And then, he's just like, I'm writing a story and I just happen to use your names.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that parts of it are I think the majority of it's really funny. And I think that Peter Sellers really I don't know if that's more reassuring for an audience, especially at that time, to see someone like Peter Sellers and be like, okay, I can laugh at this. I know that this person is supposed to be funny, and whether that was a deliberate choice to put us at ease a little bit. Yeah. That, okay, it is supposed to be funny. This is a film that we're supposed to be laughing at.
Yeah.
Because as we'll see next week, he's really good at comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a lot of this movie is done really well. It's it is just, and that's the thing I forgot, that I had no memory. I don't remember watching this and being like, that was funny, or getting that it was supposed to be funny. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that whole opening scene with Peter Sellers and, James Mason, where he's coming to kill him, and then Peter Sellers is dancing around him and doing all the voices and trying to play the game,
ping pong,
and isn't there a chessboard there too? There's a chess reference, and and then even the scenes after that, I mean, basically every scene kind of has something very uncomfortably funny.
Yeah.
There's the whole scene, when they go to see the movie, and then the mom and Lolita both grab his legs because they're scared, and then all their hands start stacking up. It's just but then it just quickly becomes more
icky.
And more uncomfortable. Yeah. And it's it gets harder and harder to laugh at. And I think, the ending is done pretty well. I mean, they show Lolita as an adult, and they just show the delusion of James Mason's character and stuff. And like I said, at the beginning, that this film is kind of a portrait of delusion.
Yeah, and I think that's where Kubrick's biggest disappointment lays, because in the novel, the whole way through you think it's just a perversion for the character, that his whole reaction and interaction with Lolita is because she is young and she does fit this profile of what he finds attractive. And then at the end, it's kind of revealed that he is in love with her. And that it's not the attraction. It's kind of he loves her. That's why he shows up, even though she's not underage anymore. He's still okay, I want to take you away. Yeah. But the film obviously can't spend the first hour and 40 minutes talking about, desires. hidden sexual desires of these characters. So it loses something there. It's got to lean more heavily on the fact that no, James Mason is like in love with this person. He just doesn't. Yeah. It's not like sexual for him. It's like an attraction, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where, again, it just loses some of the nuance that the novel has.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of like these big reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I know there's a quote where Kubrick said that if he got the chance and he knew how complicated it would be getting it past the censors, he wouldn't make it. He wouldn't have made it again, you know. And I think that lies the true reaction of this film, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, he was still very much a young filmmaker at the time.
Yeah. But as you said, I think that, you know, we saw in Paths of Glory, we saw during Spartacus, like he wants a hit. Like Kubrick wants a film to be successful. And as you said at the beginning of this discussion, like what would be more successful than a film that people think is unfilmable?
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know, people are going to go and see it. It was made for about 2 million-ish, give or take, and then grossed, you know, 4.5 million in its opening like showcase kind of thing. So it was successful.
Yeah.
And that's like what he needed after Spartacus. You know, it's something that he had set out on his own to make, and managed to make a success out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it took like 2 years after they finished filming for it to pass the censors.
Wow.
Because they kept having to take it back and like re-edit it and like work with them to try and get it, you know, releasable, I guess. They had to lean heavily into the fact that there was like it was like a love story, quote unquote, between the two characters as opposed to anything else. And yeah, I mean, they only took 88 days to film, and then took 2 years to get, you know,
that's crazy.
The seal of approval.
Well, I know even like the screenplay, like getting the screenplay done took a while too, because he contracted Vladimir Nabokov, who wrote the book, to do the screenplay. And then the first screenplay he turned in was like 400 pages. They're like, we can't film this. This is like, this is so heavy. And then basically, the movie, I mean, like the script that ended up being shot was basically Stanley Kubrick's. He edited the script so much that it was like unrecognizable to Vladimir's novel. And but Vladimir Nabokov is still credited as the screenplay writer and got nominated for an Oscar, and also gave the movie great praise. Like he was like, it's not my book, but it does something else that's just as interesting to him.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting take to have, you know, because I know that when we get to The Shining, for example, it does take liberties with the story and makes changes that did not impress the author. Whereas this, you know, it feels more of like the idea was the same. It's just not as it's just a little bit more free, you know, which it has to be. I feel like it does have to be. But yeah, because I know that, you know, originally, I mean, in the book, Lolita is 12, and in the film, she's 14.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to kind of, you know, pull that up. And a lot was made of the fact that once the film was actually released, Sue Lyon was only 16, so couldn't actually see it in America because of the rating it got. So she could only see it in England because at 16 she was able to see it at that age. And a lot of the press around the time was making a lot of noise about that the lead character couldn't see this film.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like I don't know if that was strategic. Like I'm sure he couldn't like foresee all of that stuff happening because he didn't know how hard it would be to get past the censors. But like, it's like, I feel like at least other filmmakers have taken that idea of like any buzz is good buzz.
Yeah.
And been able to like try to create controversial work in order to get people to pick out details like that and like make articles and talk about it. So that, because
Yeah.
then, you know, even I'm sure at the time, even if you didn't see the movie, you heard about it.
Well, that's it. I think that, and the fact that the tagline was birthed out of that fact.
Yeah.
You know, you read that tagline, which is, how did they ever make a film out of Lolita? And you're like, I want to go and see how they made a film out of Lolita.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the marketing was spot on, and yeah, I mean, any publicity is good publicity when you're, you know, trying to get your name out there.
Yeah.
And it's also blending the kind of classic Hollywood with like this new sentimentality that's coming through, where, you know, you can't really hold us back. We're going to tell these stories, and it's kind of ushering in a new style. You know, the French New Wave is kind of kicking off as well at this time, and there's all this kind of, it's bubbling, and I think this is definitely a push towards freedom in filmmaking, especially in America.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, it is I think it's a pivotal film. I think it's an important film in the history of cinema. But Kubrick made so many important films that it's hard to be like, you know, I don't know, to make this the one that should stand out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and like you said, even he was like, I would have done things differently.
Yeah.
But, you know, it got him to the next stage in his career. This was, was this the last Harris Kubrick production? It
was, yeah. And the first, I mean, and again, the first film that he made in England as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he got a taste for that and like the freedoms that it brought.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason that they decided to film in England was that there was an incentive called the ED Project, which it would allow foreign producers to make a film in England if 80% of the labourers were UK subjects.
Yeah.
And they'd be able to write off like a large majority of costs.
Mm-hmm.
So for Harris Kubrick, the production company who, you know, hadn't really made that much money to this point, you know, they'd made artistic and like critically acclaimed films, but not really making that much money. I can imagine that was just like the biggest selling point. And they already had James Mason attached, who was British. So
and they got Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
Who was also British, right?
Yeah, and all these crews that just, you know, were obviously British because they shot a lot of it in Britain, in England. So it was a no-brainer. And then this would obviously become Kubrick's home from now on out. You know, he would move back to New York for a little while after Lolita was finished, but would return to England full-time and start to become more reclusive and, you know,
mysterious.
The mad genius that we would know further down the line.
Yeah.
So it all kind of starts here.
It's
feel
interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting that Harris and Kubrick did all black and white films.
Mm.
It was all there. But that was probably cost too, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, especially with this film and then our next film, we're coming to the end of like early Kubrick. I think there's a very definitive like break between the two periods.
Yeah.
And here, you know, it's definitely stylistically, I think, a leg up from what we've seen so far. It's kind of heightened. And I mean, personally, I can see more of the blend of the filmmaker and the photographer together. You know, we've got in this film longer shots. The angles are a little bit different. You can tell that he's taken a lot of care into where the camera is and what they're looking at. You know, the screen is always filled with so much stuff. And he holds it for such a long time that I think the two passions, you know, and where Kubrick came from are starting to merge together better than we've ever seen. And then after Strangelove, you know, we get into the
color.
And the banger period, the banger after banger, like the films that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I think here he's still swimming towards that point.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting closer. We can see him emerging, but it's not quite 5-star. It's not, you know, the best it could be. There's still room for improvement.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going back to just the subject matter of the film and what he was trying to accomplish, I think the scene that maybe for me kind of encompasses the whole film of the whole thing of what he was trying to achieve with this film is when he goes up to the room with the hotel clerk and is trying to like open the cot.
Yeah.
And like the whole scene, it's basically like a Three Stooges scene.
It
Where
is.
you're like, it's just like slapstick comedy trying to get this cot open while the child is sleeping in the bed. And the whole time, like and you're laughing at, them like trying to get this thing open. But the whole time you're like, he's not going to sleep in that cot.
Yeah, exactly. This is just for pretenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like leading on I was surprised at how many people commented on it as well. Like I feel like every time he came in contact with like a neighbor, there were like questions are being asked of like your relationship together, and he's like, oh, whatever, you don't know anything. And that was surprising that like so many people were kind of like implicit in it. They knew what was going on, but never did anything.
Well, see, I mean, that highlights something that is actually real. I think is the fact that men like that can get away with it, and he does. I mean, he does. He dies in prison for murder, not for child rape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, every step of the way, there's people that are suspicious, and he's just like, he's not like even, I don't know, he's not even quiet about it. It's not like he's, he gets angry with Lolita, but it's more about her going out all the time. He's just jealous. He's not annoyed that she could be telling people. It's just an excuse to keep her at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a troubling character.
Yeah. But played very well. I mean, James Mason is a very good actor, and everybody else in the film is really good. Shelley Winters as Charlotte Hayes, and Sue Lyon is incredible. Like the showcase of her acting ability. I mean, the scene where she's like pissed off at him, and throwing tantrums and stuff is like some good acting. And then of course Peter Sellers is like steals the show.
Yeah, he does. And I think that Mason knew that as well. Like when when they were halfway through and he could tell that Sellers was stealing the show, he said, if I'd known that this was the part that was going to steal the show, that's the one I would have gone for.
Yeah. But it only happened to be that way because Peter Sellers was playing the character. It's like
exactly
if the tables were turned, Peter Sellers would have stole the show anyway. You know what I mean? It's like you do with the character what you do with it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was also the collaboration of Kubrick and Peter Sellers as well, creating the character, because he wasn't as prominent in the book. He was more in the background.
Yeah, because I think that Sellers, from what I've read, was very nervous about taking the part, and like not really sure that he could do it. So there must have been some trust there between the two for him to knock it out of the park like this. For him to get Kubrick to get this performance from him.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a really good partnership.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm glad that we get to see more of it.
Yeah, same. Speaking of which, what are we seeing more of next week?
Next week we are going to be finishing what I call the early period. But it's just another Kubrick film. It is Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb from 1964. This is, underhand black comedy. I think the next one is out and out black comedy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think these two are going to become a perfect double bill.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm excited to talk about that to you again.
Yes. Same. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it is.
I love this movie, Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah.
So, do you want to guess what we rated the film Lolita on Letterboxd, and then put it in our Kubrick ranking?
I do. I really do. I think this is a tough one because I think that the film is made really well.
Yeah.
And I think that there's as much in there as you could possibly put in there with the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that obviously the subject matter is worrying, but I think that you gave it a 4 out of 5.
Cool. I think that I'm gonna say the same. I think you gave it 4 out of 5.
Okay, what did you give it?
4 out of 5.
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
All right.
Yeah. I just didn't have the same feeling as I did with Paths of Glory, The Killing.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's on the same level as Spartacus. I can remember really liking it when I first watched it, and going back to it, it felt a little bit of a anticlimax. I was just like, oh, okay. You know.
Yeah.
And not that it wasn't made well. I think it was made well. I just think that Paths of Glory and The Killing just work better as films for me.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm watching it now, I'm trying to like compare it to the other films for the ranking. But it just doesn't like light
There's
my
too
fire
much
as much as
missing.
the other two. Yeah.
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 I feel that. Yeah.
But like I said, it's still really well made, and you can see like a master filmmaker doing this film.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but where are we going to put it in our ranking?
That is a good question.
I still think Paths of Glory is the best film that we've seen.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. I think maybe I think it's probably above Spartacus.
I think it's above Spartacus, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's definitely there's a lot you can learn from this movie, I think, as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Especially like what you were saying about the characters. Like not even it's like it's done in an interesting way where you're not empathizing with the character, but you're still put in his perspective all of the time.
Yeah.
And like you said, like limiting how much you see Lolita like is attributed to that. Almost like it's just like a trickery of like filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely a technique there that I think is important to learn.
Yeah, because like at the reception desk, you're still in that mindset of, oh God, Peter Sellers can hear you. Like, be quiet, you know? And it's like, I should not be not wanting this character to get away with it, but I should not be, you know, emphasizing with him, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird position to be in.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know I love Killer's Kiss, so
yeah.
I think it's either going to go in between Spartacus and Killer's Kiss or Killer's Kiss and The Killing.
Mm. I think.
What do you think?
I think that Killer's Kiss and Lolita both have different downfalls for me.
Yeah.
Killer's Kiss is still kind of amateurish, and I hate saying that because it's not like a bad film.
Yeah. What did you rate Killer's Kiss?
I think I gave it 3.5, the same.
Ah, yeah.
Whereas for this, I think it's more the restrictions of the time that hinder it. I think the filmmaking from Kubrick is better, but I just don't think that it's the film it should have been.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to put it under Killer's Kiss because for me, I think they're both level. Yeah,
I think
maybe tied.
Yeah, I mean, I think just based on the fact that overall, Killer's Kiss has more stars total between you and I.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that's fine.
Lolita. Yeah. Because I gave Killer's Kiss 5. You gave it 3.5, and then there's one less for Lolita.
Yeah, and I think if given the chance, you know, chances are I'd go and watch Killer's Kiss probably before I'd go and watch Lolita again.
Yeah.
And that's normally where I put it. And I think that's just, having seen it recently and stuff. But yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm happy there where it is. And I do want to say that James Mason is very interesting as an actor. And there's a film called Bigger Than Life from 1956, where he becomes addicted to prescription drugs. So if you're in for another seedy Mason performance, I suggest you check it out because it's incredibly good.
Sweet. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So as of right now, it's Passive Glory, number 1, The Killing, number 2, Killer's Kiss, number 3, Lolita, number 4, Spartacus, number 5, and Fear and Desire, number 6.
Not quite how I thought it would have turned out so far, to be honest. But I'm excited to see for next week because I know you love Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Tune in next week for that, next Sunday. But yeah, with that, I think that brings us to the end of the show. You can, of course, find us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio and follow us individually on Letterboxd. I am at Selmascope and Lewis is at WalkerLewis3007 to keep up with what we've been watching. We also have all of our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. Please leave us a rating and review so that we know you liked the film or hated the film. If you don't... Oh. I read that wrong. If you don't,
we're going to come and get you.
Yeah. It's like the teleprompter in Anchorman. It's just like read whatever's there. If you didn't like what we watched or talked about, let us know what we should be watching in the future, and we'll do it. But with that, all I have left to say is, do you believe in God?
The question is, does God believe in me?
I don't know, does he?
Amen.
Amen. All right, y'all have a good week.
Bye.
Peace.